States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Start.
If you could all join me in a moment of silence for men and women in uniform. Thank you. We have the Budget Committee met today just to give you all some information, and we're dutifully going through the budget process. A couple of nice notes. We've seen some significant savings that I think you'll all enjoy come tax time. John, do you want to just take off with town revitalization? Where the hell is it? I didn't even see him gone, I'm sorry.
Got that cloak of invisibility.
Well, let's,
There it is.
there he is. Okay, say your pledge of allegiance. No, I'm sorry.
I will.
I didn't know you were going.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Take a breath.
Was the intent to go through the revitalization first, even though it says 4 o'clock or something?
We had Darrell first and then Guy after that.
Okay.
It's listed under number 2.
Okay, downtown revitalization plan acceptance, Darrell Sterling.
Yay. Well, you know, we've been working the last several months to get this done. We've had 3 public meetings and a lot of information about it. We come up with an implementation matrix as part of the plan. I'm very excited about that. We took a lot of public-private feedback and consideration to do this plan, and now we're ready for the formal adoption. DECD has approved it, pending now just the action by the select board tonight to do that. And what's exciting about this is then we'll hit the ground running. We've already accomplished quite a lot from the checklist as we position the implementation of the plan this year. So there's some low-hanging fruit types of things that we could accomplish pretty quickly, and then we could package those into some future grant funding to do some of the more major things. And I see everything pretty much happening in 2020 where you'll see the real impact, and then this goes out several years, of course. And what's nice about the matrix for the implementation piece is they have all these suggestions in there based on all this feedback in year number 1. So you could prioritize those based on need or situation or opportunity, whether it's the parking issue, the signage, all of those things are there. So it's going to be a multi-pronged approach, and the plan addresses all of this, so I'm excited about that.
Thank you. We're going to be addressing questions to you or Kate or both?
However you
want.
Kate, do you have anything you want to add to all of this before we ask questions?
On the downtown plan, I just think it was a collaborative effort by the whole community. It reiterated a lot of what we've heard over the years. It's great to have it in place now so that we can go and get the grants and some of the funding mechanisms that we might need to actually implement some of the big projects. So I'm excited, and I'll talk to you about some other things that are coming up from that plan after we accept it, I guess. Or you have any more questions?
Yeah. Anybody have questions starting up here?
Oh, Darrell, with these, so we've got a list of proposed projects. And an estimated cost, but I'm not seeing any reference to grants. Is that just not?
Oh, in the plan, there's all the different grant
Okay,
entities to apply for in varying amounts as the funding, notices of funding availability come out. For example, we could apply for a $300,000 community development block grant for downtown revitalization. We can put together a downtown tax increment financing district to give us more tools. So all those things are in the plan.
but at this point, the request for, because we've got the sheet in the front of our selectmen's packet, so your budget request for the next fiscal year is $95,000?
That's separate from the downtown plan.
Okay.
The first action is just the downtown plan itself.
Did we accept that at our last meeting?
You
No, we
tabled
wanted to
No,
table
oh,
this today.
because they weren't here.
Oh, jeez.
So after we get acceptance of this,
We just need you to,
then the Rangeley Region Economic Opportunity Committee has a proposed budget.
Okay.
It's separate from the downtown plan, but some of it ties in so that it will have some funds to
Okay.
help towards the implementation of this.
All right, well, we can't,
That sheet should have probably been addressed during the budget meeting. That's why it was in the very front of the binders. I think
Okay.
I should have put an
Yep.
explanation with it. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I should have explained that.
We went over it today at our meeting.
yeah, it was in the front of our, so I thought that's what was being
Yeah.
discussed first, it was in the front of the binder, it's fine.
The other budget's 69,500.
that's
Correct.
for parking, which I'd love to talk to you about.
We will.
So what you're looking at now is a motion to approve the
Downtown road.
downtown revitalization plan. All right, I'll make a motion to approve the downtown revitalization action plan, dated from Wright Pierce Engineering as presented to the board.
Second.
Second, before we move on, is there any comments or questions out in the audience? No? Okay, all in favor?
You forgot discussion.
So,
I just,
what's that?
you forgot discussion. I was gonna ask a question. Should we wait for the other two? I don't think that's.
Yeah, we're all set. We've seen enough
Perfect.
of this. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next, let me just bring, if you don't mind, Gary, I want to bring Kate, who could fill us in a little bit on some of the detail
Okay.
there.
So, the Economic Development Committee, and the community got excited about this downtown plan, which is great. So during the conversation and a lot of the meetings, we talked about parking, our downtown parking scenario, how accessible it is, how easy it is to get to downtown. And one of the first priorities that we looked at and meetings groups that we put together was on that topic, on parking. Some of our community stepped up and said that they wanted to be part of it, so we asked Joe Haley and Kate Philbrook, also were on our small little team that looked at parking. It was also Laura Reynolds, myself, Keith Savage, and then we did update John the other day, he sat in with us. And our next step is really to bring it to the select board to make sure that we're on the track that you want us to be on, any suggestions you might have, and talk about next steps, because what we've looked at, we would need your approvals to go forward and do a little bit more analysis. So we studied the first thing we looked at, which came across very clearly in the downtown plan in a lot of the meetings that the public had, was our diagonal parking. A lot of the going through town, our trucks being much larger than normal, over the years the trucks have grown, the SUVs have grown, and when you park in there and you're trying to back out, and how difficult it can be sometimes to back out of those spots or see around those spots. Also, our traffic has increased with some of our trucking, with the Poland Springs coming through and additional trucking. So that came up as an issue, and we thought as a good safety measure, and also a visibility of our downtown shops, instead of looking at hitting the car and coming at you, or backing up into you, or trying to go around it, you would actually be able to look and see what the stores were if we removed the diagonal spots and made them parallel spots. So that was our number one focus area. When we looked at that, we determined we would lose 8 spots, which is where I said we have 26 diagonal spots. We felt we would lose approximately 8. Wright Pierce had a lower number than that. They had approximately 3. We thought that was kind of hard to do, so we decided to err on the side of caution and say 8 was the number of spots we would lose on the main street. During the park work that's been happening and on Lake Street, we know that we're actually picking up more spots on Lake Street, and that will be happening, I believe, this spring. So we will, I've heard the number 10 additional spots will be on Lake Street. So we'll pick up the 8 losses on Lake Street. The question is, would the public feel that that was accessible parking? So we decided to look at all of the parking areas that we have around. Some we lease, like Depot Street up at the IGA. We have the spot here on Pleasant Street. And we looked at all of those issues, and we did notice we have a big issue, and it did come up in the downtown plan, with signage and making sure that people knew exactly where these parking areas were. Parking up, 50 feet to the left or whatever, whatever the parking scenario was, it was difficult to spot that parking. So we do feel signage is important with parking. We looked at a lot of different buildings and different potential places where we could potentially add a parking area. And after looking at all the options and pricing some out, we determined that we thought if we did need to add additional parking, a good spot for that would be behind the Chamber of Commerce, Parkside in Maine, and Backwoods. That is park land, it's town-owned land. And we felt we could add 12 to 20 spots. We had Joe do a walk through the snow and plot it all out. So he came up with 12 to 20. We would, if we were to do that, we would recommend it be passenger vehicles only and not trailers or anything like that, or you'd lose the parking. With a walkway through by Backwoods and Alpine Shop, you're right on Main Street, right? So you park and you walk right through and you're right on Main Street going to all the shops. So the pricing, we put some engineering money in for removing the diagonal spots and parallel spots, but DOT is planning on coming up here on the 15th. They'll be meeting with Keith Savage and Daryl and myself, and talking about how they can help us with this, because DOT is interested in helping. Then we looked at what it would be to create a parking area where we just mentioned. And we felt there needed to be engineering money put aside for that. We got an estimate of $60,000, and that would be paving it, lining it, making the pathways, etc. And then we wanted to make sure it didn't look like one big parking lot, because it would go off the chamber parking. It would extend that parking, and we needed to do some landscaping. So that's where the total number, and some signage, the total number of $69,500 came from. So I guess where we're at is to move forward with removing diagonal spots and making them parallel is basically a town select board decision. So we think, it would make sense to do a public hearing to get the public's input on that. But that potential cost would be minimal to maybe none to do that. And they paint lines in the spring, so the springtime would be something we would be looking at for that. The parking area would be the determination, I guess, if we think we need the extra parking, the 12 to 20 spots. And that would be our recommendation as to an easily accessible parking area. We did look at Depot Street, is a parking area, but that's a little bit farther away, 16. We don't see a lot of people parking there and wanting to walk through the downtown to go, to a store. We find that they probably will not do that. So that's where we added there. If we were to do Depot Street, we would recommend you pave it and line it, and then we lease it year by year. It's a lease that comes up, and that is owned by a third party, a private individual. But the paving cost would probably be about the same.
Thank you. Yep.
You want me to go first or Cindy?
Yep, and then I'll get to questions. Yep.
Okay, I can add to that. Spoke with MDOT. Basically, they changed diagonal to parallel parking. It looks like between the 3 and the 10, it's 5 spaces would probably be lost. We would pick up another 10 spaces on the Lake Drive coming to Lakeside Park. So we'd already have a net pickup of at least 5 spaces before we even got to the tennis court. So if we did this in a couple of phases, phase 1, to eliminate the diagonal and convert to parallel, all that's needed is a highway entry permit, and they'll waive the fee because we're correcting a safety hazard, and so it'll be no cost to the town. And then it's just a matter of doing the striping. DOT does not stripe the spaces, they only do the center lines in the other lane. So that would just be an activity in the spring that Public Works, whoever does the striping, would reconfigure those. We'd have a quick engineering sketch from Wright Pierce that would show, you know, what the ADA compliant spaces are, how they match up with the ADA crossing. It'd be a done deal. It's not a big issue. So that would take care of that one.
Good.
And then doing a little widening to have the spaces come into Lakeside Park, that makes perfect sense to adjust that, especially since the landscaping for the boat ramp and the extended parking project is going to be happening in the spring, so you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone doing it that way. And then decide, you know, if we want to do a parking by the tennis courts behind Lakeside Kitty Corner to the chamber, then that could also be a third thing as we go in steps, then so forth.
Yeah, I mean, part of
Cost-effective
our,
way to do it.
I mean, we're talking about parking right now, but in the downtown plan, it talks about streetscapes and lighting and sidewalks, and if we remove the diagonal and make them parallel, we gain space, right? Because we have now a nice wide space going through town. We could make the sidewalks more ADA compliant, widen them, put some nice street lighting. I mean, long term, we're talking about what are the options with telephone poles in that little section, you know, getting them either behind or buried, and then street lighting and all that kind of stuff would have to happen. That is obviously something that would be more a year or 2, 3 down the line, and we would be looking at funding mechanisms to
I'll
help
have it
us
in
implement
2020.
that.
Cindy?
So, the meeting with DOT regarding the switch from diagonal to, out of the diagonal parking, that's March 15th?
March 15th, yeah.
Okay,
At 10
o'clock.
a.m. yeah.
okay, so.
They also said that they would talk to us about, we're talking about sidewalks and streetscapes and all sorts of things, so when Joe talked to them, and Joe, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they said they would also talk to us about curbing and sidewalks from Route 17 down to the, I believe, the boat launch down in the plaza.
Kind of look at it, see what.
Yeah,
we can
look
do.
at it, see what it would entail and what they could or couldn't do to help us.
So we'll get an update after that?
Yeah, and DOT's on board because what this does, is you think of all these segments, sidewalk onto the scenic overlook, and then we do the interior
Right.
sidewalks, we straighten out this parking hazard, it's all
There's-
pieces that are fitting together.
There is another issue with the, well, it's not an issue, it's just something we would need to research and go to the town for, is if we were to add a parking area, increase the parking area in the town park, we would have to go to the town park commission
That was my
and
next
get
question.
their approval
Right.
for making sure that we don't overrun the green space requirement for the park. So that, we wouldn't do that unless you said it was, you wanted us to continue forward. We just didn't want to waste time on something that wasn't of interest to the town to continue onward.
Good, thank you.
That was my other question, was if the park commission had been involved with that discussion at all.
Not at all, no.
If that's next up, I met with Keith Savage for an hour today, we covered all of these things, all the infrastructure projects, including that one, and then going through channels with the park commission and get all these things done.
Okay. Joe, did you have something more to add?
Yeah, I checked with the Alpine Shop, they're all in favor of a sidewalk from Main Street to this parking lot. They gotta check with Brett and Nancy Kettle, cause the condo there, they just gotta get their blessing, it's all, be all set for a nice sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
You know, on the high side of Jimmy's and between there and the Alpine. Fit it right in there and go right over there.
Anything? Okay. I know, Mark, you're raising your hand. I've got a public hearing on this, so we'll go at that there, if that's okay. We're sort of off agenda here, but I wanted to hear the presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else you want to add?
So just, we'll be publicizing March 20th, first day of spring, at Rangeley Inn will be the downtown launch social, gathering to just
Okay.
introduce the community more to what these activities will be.
All right, thank you.
It's a great idea.
What's that?
It's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Okay.
Ken, is this public, part of comments on this, or?
Yes.
Well, we're gonna wait for public hearing then. I just wanted to hear from the committee tonight. Okay, thank you. Next up, Guy Rule.
Thank you. At the last select board meeting, which was, well, maybe it was the last, maybe it was a month ago, end of January, you guys had showed some interest in the solar array. We'd given a briefing on that. And so I was asked to come in to give have a little bit more of a discussion in depth. Overall, before I did that though, I thought I'd give a brief update of the runway. It'd take me about 3 or 5 minutes, and just so everybody's up to speed of where we are with the runway construction. Then we'll go ahead and have the solar discussion, talk about next steps if there are any, if you guys choose to, and then pretty much a pretty brief conversation today really, mainly around the solar array. Before we do that though, I thought I'd just give an update with the runway. Of course, the runway construction, you can see it in red. This is the preferred alternative, which is an extension to the northwest of 720 feet and then 409 feet, just the way that it worked out on the south end. To date, of 550,000 square yards of material, cubic yards of material, we've now placed just a little under 400,000. So most of the material's been placed. On the big end, which is the northwest end, all of the material has been placed when it comes to the chick hill, the borrowing and the crushing and the laying of that material. And then on the south end, they put a lot of the material in place. Of course, they have more to go, but most of the material has been excavated, and frankly, they just wanted to get at least 1 month of snowmobiling in before, because they've been working all winter. So they've gone home. Most of the equipment that was used was was rented equipment. They wanted to send that equipment back as well, and so now where we are is most of the material has been placed. The runway's in good shape for the material placement. They'll come back in the spring. We'll make sure the frost is out of the ground, and then we're going to continue on with the overall construction, which is scheduled to go to about mid-August, early to mid-August. There is one, so far they're on budget, on time, on schedule. There was one change order that was talked about. It's a potential change order. I should have put potential there. At the closeout end of construction meeting, which was last Friday at the trailer, there was talk about adding a little bit more of a turnaround on the ends of the runways that would tie in nicely with the taxiway when the taxiway project does move forward. So I'll talk about that briefly. We've already started kind of working on that to see if we can get FAA blessing. Of course, we won't move forward unless the town blesses it, but I'll just give a brief description of that. Just briefly, the main priority today is to talk about the facility development, which is the solar array. The solar array, as you can see, we had it on the master plan from day one, just kind of circling it there. And really, the purpose of the solar array is this. We are adding runway in. We are adding impervious surface that's going to require plowing. It's going to require lights to be replaced. It's going to add to the light bill. So, one of the overall preferred alternative was how can we offset the overall cost of the airport, the increase in operating expenses. So, we're going to talk about that with the solar array. Briefly put, I just wanted to show this to John, to the chair, who was at in the trailer the other day. This is already kind of in the works. We're working with FAA right now, but I wanted to show the public basically what we're looking at. On the left panel really is the northwest end of the runway. The right panel is the southeast end of the runway. What we found was there's a potential for the taxiway project to move forward, but it's still kind of, when is that going to happen? What I found is that, actually I'm just going to go up here and point if I could. I didn't bring my laser pointer. What I found was it's aircraft will come in and do a turnaround. Some we're going to find aircraft just sitting here at the end of the runway. Others are going to try to land while they're sitting there. It's not exactly a safe situation. So we're working with the FAA, and I think the town supports this, and at least when we were talking with the contractors the other day, is just to add a little bit of impervious surface here, some paving. There's plenty of material to do this, and what it'll allow airplanes to do is to actually get away from, this is the runway safety area, so there's not going to be anybody trying to just kind of sit here while aircraft are landing. This would give them a little bit more room. They can come over here, just stay out of the safety area, which is right here. And the reason we need this little extra pavement area is because we don't want to put a big aircraft in here and then they can't turn around. So there's a little extra pavement, but the only really, if you will, addition, this would actually, if the taxiway project did move forward, or when it moves forward, this would already be constructed. This is just the additional right here. And it's the same dimension on both ends. So we've had that drawn up, we vetted it with our engineers, and the FAA kind of gave us an indication that they may support this. It would be a change order. The change orders, the way they work with FAA is, this is a 100% funded project, and FAA allows for projects like this to go 15% over. The contractors to date have done exemplary. They've done a great job. They've not requested any change orders, so this would just be a change order, still 100% funded. So we don't know if the FAA is going to bless it. We're working with them. They may say no, but it is certainly worth a conversation, and I'll report back to the select board when we know for sure, and the town, of course. So let me move on to the solar array. We last week, or I should say the last time we were here at the select board meeting, this is just a summary of what the annual cost increases were going to be. Shane had given the presentation. As you can see, pavement with the taxiway overall would be a 41% increase in pavement. It would be a mobile area will go down because you pave the taxiway, the acreage would go down. But airfield lights are going to be up significantly, so that's going to add to your power bill. Winter maintenance would go up 41%, so those are pretty much in line with the others. And crack ceiling, lights, etc., all those things would go up about 15%. We really came down to post-construction budget was about a 25% increase over previous years. So how do we handle that? Well, we heard loud and clear in the when we're doing the public meetings for the runway, we're going to add all this pavement lights. How do we pay for that? That's just an additional cost. So we have done this before. I built this solar array at Rutland, Vermont, and to the top left is the actual system being built. I used local high school kids to actually hang all the solar panels while the teachers were there. The actual build system, I know it's a little small, is there. You could Google Earth that. That's on the west side of the Rutland, Southern Vermont Regional Airport. And then the finished product, of course, is down below. How we got there is this. What I'm going to suggest to the town is you do a feasibility study. Why would you do a feasibility study? Well, we want to make sure, one, that whatever's built can be supported by, one, the power company, two, the local infrastructure that you have in place right now. And the other reason why you do a feasibility study is if those first two answers are answered positively, well, exactly to what size do you want to build this thing? So we would want to, and part of the feasibility study that we would offer up to the town, we would come in, meet with stakeholders, and ask, what do you want to do? Example would be, local power bill for the airport's only $4,000. Do you just want to build an array that would replace the $4,000 at the airport, or do you want to replace the full appropriation of the airport, which is around $50,000? And so that would be the first step of the feasibility study, coming up with the project's objectives to reduce your operating expenses. The stakeholder team itself, I mentioned it before, we did use the local technical school. It was a great opportunity for the kids, and frankly, most of the installation that we did at Rutland was, most of the cost to install it was labor, and we had free labor, and it was a learning opportunity for the kids. So we would do the same here if there's an opportunity for a local tech school to do exactly that. Well, let me just make one point there. We would not allow the kids to play with electricity, really. It's literally just putting up the racking, it's hanging the panels, and that was the majority of the labor to install this thing. And that solar array was about 256 solar panels that we did at Rutland Airport with the kids.
If I can add, the foster tech is interested in having some of the kids participate in.
So the array, once we identify the stakeholders and what your overall objectives are, then we'd have to start looking at the array sizing based on the town goals. And some things we want to look at is, are there net metering restrictions? In Vermont has the most number of power companies than any other state in the United States, and they all have different rules. We'd want to look at the rules here. Will they accept X, and what size array can you plug into the grid before they say, whoa, that's too big of an array. Now you're getting into the next size, and it's different rules and regulations. So part of the feasibility study would frankly be looking at what are those restrictions, and we would go through that. We would also look at FAA reflectivity study. When I wrote this up, I wrote refluxivity because I had some burrito, unfortunately, but I fixed it before we got here. But the reflectivity is the ocular study, the glare of the solar panels. The only runway that this would affect really would be runway 32, because it's left traffic, and not to get all techie on you, but for landing on 32, it's left traffic. It would be the only time there would be an issue with somebody having a reflection issue from the solar panels. The ones we did at Rutland, we found the right panel. There's a very specific panel with absorption and all this other stuff. So we would, not to get techie on you, but we would make sure the right panels are put in play. But the FAA requires the study. We would do that as part of the feasibility study. We would, through, in public meetings, similar to what I did with the airport, alternatives. We would want to come in with the alternatives. Again, briefly put, do you just want to replace the power bill at the airport, $4,000? Do you want to replace the entire operating cost of the airport, $50,000? Or do we also want to see if we want to start chipping away at the the wastewater facility, because that's another $50,000. There is plenty of room, and my mouse isn't working, but that center picture, you see that solar array, that's only a quarter of an acre, and it's 256 panels, and it erased $25,000 of power bill for the Rutland Airport. So for every quarter acre, it's about $25,000 roughly, just simply put. So if we're looking at using a whole acre, we could replace the airport's appropriation and possibly pick into, again, the wastewater facility. There's going to be a little coordination needed with FAA if we do more than the airport, but we can certainly outline that in the feasibility study.
Guy, can you just make sure that it's clear to everybody? I'll try. We're not talking about the wastewater facility on airport property as yet. We are talking
Correct.
about on their property. So don't get the idea that whatever we put up at the airport, should we do it, we'll take care of the treatment plant. That's another location.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
FAA has restrictions on what we can do there.
The only complaint, sorry, go ahead.
Is there any way to do this with the right protocol, when the time is right, to think about green energy and solar array for the industrial park that's there, close proximity?
Not on the FAA property.
Not on the FAA
Right.
property, but
Right.
this type of methodology to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably is that up there.
Yeah. And I'll keep it simple. The only complaint I had with this solar array from the state of Vermont was that we generated too much power one month, and they didn't know how to take care of the extra money that was coming in, because the state's not in business to make money. So we did find another meter. It was another airport. It made good sense. I was just throwing that out there.
Yep.
So there, in the solar or the feasibility study, we would of course do an estimation of installation costs. How much would this thing actually cost based on the project objectives? We would also we would recommend a reserve fund. A lot of folks, solar is so new, it's within the last 25 years really in the broader schemes of things. So how much is it going to cost to replace a panel? When you replace all these panels, the inverters, things of that nature. So similar to equipment funds and other reserve funds that you have with the town, we would recommend a reserve fund, and we would just basically give a template of what that would look like based on the estimate of the equipment costs. Lastly, in the feasibility study, we would have an implementation plan, and that would include, design, when the design should happen, permitting if needed, and also overall construction. How would you get this thing constructed? That would be in the feasibility plan. With that, as simple as I could keep it, I think that's what we're looking to do. The overall next steps for this, really, this is, when I did the Rutland project, we used, ironically, Du Bois and King at the time. They had reported to me, I had them on retainer, similar, you guys have Du Bois and King on retainer here. So this is an airport project, and you could use the D&K General Consulting Agreement. And, the next step, of course, would just be for us to write up a scope and a fee, enter into a contract after it's been, of course, reviewed, and then the feasibility study could begin. And we're estimating that the overall study would take approximately 120 days.
Questions? Yep.
Mine's kind of probably stupid, but how, with all the snow that we get, especially up at the airport and the wind and stuff, what's the wear and tear on those, on the
Yep.
solar units?
Yeah, great question. So you always angle these at the latitude you're at. You're at about 45 degrees north latitude. So we don't put any articulated solar arrays in. We just put ground mount, fixed mounts, 45 degrees. The snow will fall off. They'll slide off. Sometimes they don't. But we would calculate your solar output for the array for the entire year based on we usually subtract about 30 days per year for snow cover. So you'll lose some of the output of the solar array while there's snow on it, but for the most part, most of the year you'll have good solid output.
I think she's talking about wear and tear on the equipment.
Right.
So that's the snow. The wear and tear, these things are designed, they have a spec sheet to go down to minus 60 degrees, and so they don't, we'll ground mount them, we'll put them on a mount, they'll be designed, the mounts themselves will be designed for all the wind loading, things like that, in ice, wind and ice, so we'll design it that way.
Get it? Yeah. Anybody? Yes, Joe?
What's the ballpark cost to design it or whatever? All that.
Well, I was recommending we do feasibility first to see what size. It's very hard, and that's why, actually, to
Right.
answer your question. We don't know. Do you want to replace the total appropriation of the airport, or do you just want to replace the power bill? And that would make a difference of what the actual design cost would be.
Does FA, they pay part of that?
The FA will not pay for
Pay
this.
none of this.
What was Vermont's return on investment timeline for that?
Yep, so Vermont's solar array cost with all of the equipment was about, an installation was and please don't quote me on this, I know it was just over 100,000, and their power bill was $24,000 a month. So it pretty much paid for itself.
A year, 24,000 a
Sorry,
year.
thank you, $24,000.
Yeah.
$24,000 a year. So it did replace that in about we calculated about a 7.5 year payback. The installation, the purchase, we had some design work.
The airport is going to have some money in there that will be able to handle this due to the 100% funding aspect of airport project, so, yes.
I'd just like to add, I also met with Daryl, and we could all work together in regards to grants to also help pay, because if there's grants available out there, then let's save that money for.
Right. Yes, Mr. Warga.
May I ask Darrell a question about the lighting on the ongoing
Absolutely.
airport project? I was just wondering, with the, I got thinking about it during the presentation of the taxiway, and with Darrell's project, there, with the downtown revitalization, there was a lot of discussion about dark sky and that being an attraction to this area and that type of thing. And the airport has the potential to have one of the bigger concentrations of lighting in town.
Yep.
And I just don't know anything about alternative lighting at airports that maybe there's some that work like the PAPIs that, the pilots can see them, but the general public really can't see
Yep.
much of the lighting. They don't emit much light pollution. Are there things like that with other type of lighting at the?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I find with airports is it's poor maintenance, and what I mean by that is they put the wrong light bulb into the taxiways. They're supposed to be 35 watt bulbs, they put the runway light bulbs in there, which is much brighter. To answer your question, they're either 45 watt or 30 watt, and that's it. And so they don't have in their design just to emit outward and upward. And the runway lights, however, of course, as you know, are on a photocell and also pilot controlled, so they will time out.
The reels are you talking about? Or the runway edge lights?
Well, the runway edge lights and the taxiway lights.
The reels are also a time.
That's right. The reels will come on pilot activated as well. The reels are kind of directional, so they'll only go for a certain fan of light, and if they're not oriented right, some people might see them, and they're supposed to be upward as well. So directly, to your question, there's no real technology that I'm aware of for.
Yeah, because there's lights on the AWAS as well. I know the beacon, there's no change in that, but, you know, in the buildings, they could put the downcast in ones like they
Yeah.
do around town.
Well, it's an interesting point. I've heard people.
Downcast for what?
Like the packs that they put on buildings that just point, the lights just point down the side of the
Like we did.
building to
Oh,
Like we do with
thing
the park.
rather than
Okay,
get dispersed.
I misunderstood you. I thought you were suggesting going downward pointing.
No.
No,
Where the lights said-
I realized the planes.
Yeah.
Right.
We are gonna ask Kenny Mollison, he's the electrical contractor, to make sure, because I've heard people say that rotating beacon may not, maybe it's not aligned right. We're gonna have him check it, because there is a certain alignment to it. It's supposed to be outward, not straight out. It's supposed to be up 10 degrees, no more than 40 degrees upward. So we're gonna have him check that alignment. We heard that in one of the public
They
meetings.
replaced that during the 500-foot extension in 1991, and at the time, Steve Bean told me they had a 30-mile one, and he was flying for the Navy, and he said he could see it down on the coast of Maine. You know, we could look back and see Rangeley's rotating beacon, and, you know, they replaced it with a 40-mile one, you know, it was 25% brighter, and he was saying they don't really need that.
Yeah. Okay.
All set?
I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Mark, if I could add part two, the downtown will have LED, really efficient lighting, and do new lighting down there that'll be a good fit for that, our community.
Yeah, I was just thinking where the airport's only a mile and a half, and the concentration of lights, it's gonna be one of the
Can leave
bigger
it right there.
concentration of lights that can be seen from downtown.
Okay, now that we got lighting all straightened out, appreciate it. Remember to check with CMP before you suggest to us we're gonna put it underground. We did this once before. Huge amount of money.
No, we've gotten all the price, in the downtown plan, they talked
Yep.
about the pricing about,
Yep.
bearing versus it's, cheaper to move them behind buildings than
Right.
it is.
Appreciate that. Next up, I need a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes for Monday, February 4th, as presented with any corrections.
Second.
Any changes? Comments? All in favor? Thank you. Public to speak on non-agenda items. Mr. Haley. Is everybody signed in, by the way? Make sure you're all signed in. Thank you. Please.
I got a question, and it goes back to the downtown revitalization plan. And I'm wondering if they have a budget yet, and has anybody done anything, or is there any kind of a plan per se, or interest in cleaning up that old Main Street service station?
No budget as of yet, but it is part of doing the beautification and cleanup of downtown. It'll be brought forth, we'll make a note of that, because one of the things we're gonna be looking at with our codes and zoning or any blighted areas, when we look at a national declaration where we have some blighted areas in order to qualify for block grant funds. So we'll be looking at all of that as part of the study, but we don't have money yet set aside. So this is what we would do to rehab or purchase or do something with that site. But that's in the work. It'll be part of the overall activities as we address that and other similar situations.
Did that get you, Kenny?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna excuse myself, because I gotta go take care of my back, but thank you.
Okay, Ken. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Anything else on the public to speak? All right, appreciate it. Board.
Thanks, everybody. See you.
Good night, Darrell. Thank you.
Good night,
Good night.
Darrell. Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna skip along here pretty quick. We've got somebody else that needs to get down the highway and may not be able to see. We received minutes from the ordinance committee and downtown parking meeting, January 29th. Any comments on any of that you noticed? No? Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
just the date on the downtown parking. It says 1/29/2015.
That might have been, that was me, sorry.
That makes it
Well, whatever.
I was like, wait a minute, I think it's been current than that, but yeah.
Thank you.
But I do have an update from the Rangeley Region Economic Opportunity Committee. If I could, I don't know if this is the appropriate
Well, we were on
time.
purpose.
You want to hear that? You good? Yeah, go ahead.
Previously, Laura, I believe, gave you an update about the Community Destination Academy and filing for that application. We did file for that application,
Okay.
and we did receive the award for it. So the main consortium wants to start immediately. They picked us as their next destination site. The first meeting is going to be on March 4th, and that will be with a small group of 6 to 8, members of the community and of the town. So I think, Steve, I'm not sure, I believe she had talked to you about
Yeah,
that
she
as
has,
a
yep.
participant. Some of the other nonprofits. It did have a $2,500 application fee for that. We do have reserve monies in the economic development plan, and we would like to use that to pay for that fee. However, we are planning on charging the other organizations and groups that are involved in this to pay back a lot of that fee. I mean, the town would have some financial obligation as well, but not the full $2,500. So I just wanted to tell you that that has been granted, and we would love to go, and we've already scheduled that first meeting.
So do we need to approve that $2,500 expenditure out of the, okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve the $2,500 to be taken from the Rangeley Region Economic Opportunity Committee's Reserve Fund.
Is that a downtown revitalization one?
What's going on?
I believe it's the economic.
It's
I think
economic,
it's the 20,000 that we got.
economic reserve fund, not theirs, but
Oh,
economic.
Economic Reserve Fund. I amend my motion to,
Reflect that
yes,
change.
that correction.
I need a second.
Second.
All in favor? Okay.
I also, just make one quick comment. In the beginning, you started talking about the budget requests from the economic development side. We would be certainly more than happy to explain every single line item and method at whatever time is appropriate for you to have that conversation with us.
Yeah,
next budget meeting, next Monday,
Yeah, let's do it then.
yeah, next
4
Monday.
o'clock.
next Monday at
Or-
Okay.
5.
Oh,
August at 4.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
Okay, perfect.
Can y'all just transfer that sheet into your budget finders then, so you'll have it?
Please.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
We good, Kate?
That's it, that's it.
Okay.
Steve, before you go on, under adjustments to the agenda, add to number 6, the warrant that I passed out, warrant number 35.
Yep. That's coming right up here. Okay. Disbursement warrants, number 33.
I'll make a motion to approve AP warrant number 33 in the amount of $120,268.20.
Second.
All in favor? So moved.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve AP warrant number 35 in the amount of $14,423.34.
Second.
Any questions on any of that? All in favor? So moved.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer computer estimate. No, you don't need approval from us, do you?
From the
Would it come from
the
reserve?
Oh, it would come from
Computer
reserve. So what reserve?
Computer reserve.
Okay, all right, so I'll make a motion to approve up to $1,500 to come out of the computer reserve account to pay for the treasurer's new computer.
Second.
What happened? Just out of curiosity.
I've had this computer, well, I think pretty much since I had a laptop like the first few months that I started here, which is not adequate to work from. And it's like, if I go to the counter and I'm at the counter for 20 minutes and I go back, sometimes I can't get it to turn back on. So I have to do like a hard shutdown or in
So
the
it's
morning.
malfunctioning on you?
It is. It takes 20 minutes for it to turn on.
Man, that's fine.
Yep.
So, yeah.
All in favor?
You've had a good life.
We have a correspondence from Valerie Zapolsky from the RFA president. Dear Rangeley Selectmen and town voters, thank you so much for your support of the RFA after-school arts program. The students really appreciate it. time, attention, and different activities that they are exposed to in the CAS, what does that stand for?
Cas.
At the theater?
It's an after-school program at the theater.
Right, no, but this is, okay, the program. They are learning things that they didn't know they could, and are happy in the process. Sincerely, State President. Thank you. Okay, old business. We've talked about the revitalization. Any more to the update? I think we're good there. Waste management proposal agreement. John?
I gave you, a copy of, email from Peter LaChapelle from Waste Management. Unfortunately, they cannot move on the fixed rate increase proposed to the town. And if you remember, that was 5 years at 3% each year for both tipping fees and transportation. The only other option I could offer is using CPI, water and sewer and trash collection services, based on a full calendar year, 12-month rolling average. To put that in perspective, 2018 was 3.5%. It's unfortunate, but I would be leery of going with that route. So I went on the internet and looked up CPIs for several years, and I found like from 2006 to 2011, all of them were 5%, 6% for this category. I didn't find anything between 11 and 16, but 16 and 18, I believe, was 3.7%, 16 and 17. And that's what he charged me at Mexico, and all in Oxford was this year 3.7%. I don't know, who can predict 5 years of inflation? It just seems that under this category, it seems higher than what, overall inflation has been for several years. So, I talked to Steve briefly. The only thing I could think about is maybe not do it for 5 years, do it for less term, but when you think about it, fixed percent, 3% each year, probably not a bad deal.
Yeah, I can't see it going down. I mean, your average is already exposed at higher. So,
I think we saw, 7 or 8 years in a row of virtually no inflation. In the last couple of years, we're starting to see every year it's creeping up a little bit. The Fed has added more interest on what they loan. That's the driver to me. I don't see that stopping soon. But again, I'm not an economist. I mean, the market fluctuates by the minute. So,
yeah.
what do you do? I don't think this gamble, given what I've seen, is valuable. I think the 3% locked in for 5 years, at least you're gonna know what you got.
Exactly.
You can't change it. I mean, he could change, it's a force majeure thing in there, he could change it if there's a catastrophe, but that's unlikely to happen, so you're gonna know what you're gonna get for tipping fee charges. So I guess I would recommend we stay with the original proposal.
Okay.
Need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the solid waste collection and disposal services agreement with Waste Management as presented.
Second.
As presented is, just, let's fill in the blanks, John, so we have it in the motion.
Okay.
Page,
Well, do you want me to quote the
beginning-
yearly increase for transportation disposal we fixed at 3% per year?
Yeah, and that's all 5 years, but the first year, beginning July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020, It's for municipal solid waste, demo, bulky waste, $373.72 per haul for a single haul, and $297.77 per haul for a double haul, and then $69.94 per ton, with the exception of demolition debris would add to that main state fee that they put on demo debris. And then that is 3% on top of what we're paying today. So, and then 3% each year, beginning July 1st, 2020, for a total of 5 years.
All set? All in favor? No opposed, thank you. LD 211, open primaries. We received, I asked to have this back on, I understand you received the same sort of thing
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
mail?
we did.
Yep.
So it's-
How do you all feel about this?
I think it looks like it's an individual decision. I don't think it's a board decision, is it?
No, I
Looks
think
like
it's
a
fine.
lobbying effort
Yeah.
for your own, you're on board.
So they want each and every one, not
Good.
just the one.
Good. Thank you for doing new business. Anything new business?
I read the other day that the DEP is gonna be sending out applications for those, environmental box culverts in April.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got it all designed already. From right this, the whole, probably 100-page bid document, everything's in the works already, for 2 of them. So my proposal would be, even if we got one funded, I would do the one by Bald Mountain Camps, and
Whoa, wait a minute, hold it. That's not gonna look good in the report. That would be the Ball Mountain Road, between
the one on the
122
opposite
and
side
125.
of Bald Mountain Road.
I can see it now.
I would not do the one on the Rangeley Plantation side of Bald Mountain Road.
Yeah, there you go.
Tell her with that.
But we have 2 there, one's on the paved portion, one's on the
Gravel.
gravel. So my recommendation would be, we do the one on the paved portion so that we can finish paving that road. We only have the base pavement, and if we can get this grant, then that's the one we do. I mean, it's pretty expensive for these things, and they only have $5 million to allocate, but I did see there's another bill in the works this year for another $5 million. The state intends to keep this going, so it's just a matter of time, I think. But we're ready to go, and we'll submit this and see what happens. And just one more.
You need a motion from us to submit? No.
No, not at this point. Because we have the money for the match. I
Right.
think it's an 80-20. I had asked Darrell, he thought it was 80-20, but I'm not sure. But regardless, we have the money in that bond to do this. That was all approved pretty much when we approved the money to pave the road. That's part of it, that's why this is all done, I think. So, when we submit the grant, we still have to wait for them to issue the application. When we submit it, we'll bring it before the board, so we can see what. Just to let you know, it's in the works right now. And then we briefly talked about the Verizon tower at the budget meeting, so late April, early May is the time frame for when they put that.
Thank you. Anything else?
No?
Department head updates. Anything there? Anything stick out to you guys? Want to ask questions about anything? Okay. Auditor is rescheduled for March 4th at 5 PM.
4.
It says 5 here.
Oh, mine says.
You want a 4?
Mine says 4.
4? Okay. We received notice that there's a public hearing in Rumford at the high school for the new construction project at Middle Dam, Brookfield White Pine Hydro. It's on March 19th at, there's 2 meetings actually. One of them is the strategic meeting at noon and the other one's at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock.
One is a technical session,
Technical session, yeah, that's,
public
excuse me.
session at
And
5.
then the other one is at 5 PM. Okay? Those of you who are interested in going and see that, participate. It's like any other of those public hearings, you gotta sign up to be a stakeholder and make a presentation, ask questions. Any questions or comments on that? You all set? Public notice, other business, overview of Governor Mills' proposed budgets. You wanna comment on that, John, at all, or?
Yeah, I wanted to show you all the portions in her budget submittal that deal with monies that affect municipalities. So you have a good idea of how many issues there are. She's proposing a 0.5% increase in revenue sharing, which will be helpful, but in reality, it's a 2.5% decrease from the 5% that's already in the law for this year. So just keep that in mind. That's a huge difference, but it is, over the last 4 years, it's been 2%. So it's a step in the right direction. As you can see, it's 2.5% this year and then 3% next year. So that will help. Additional money for education. There's something in there on the homestead exemption, which basically, I saw something that MMA put out that they thought it was initially more money, but what it is money to make sure we get reimbursed 62.5% in both years of the biennium. Because last year, what they did was, the first year of the biennium, we only got 50%. Second year, we got 62.5%. So the amount of money that's in there for the reimbursement, they had to add $5 million to make sure both years were going to be reimbursed at 62.5. That's what that's about. A couple of other things. It's interesting reading to see how many things impact municipalities when it comes to the state budget. So I thought you'd be interested in looking at that.
All set, John?
Yeah.
Next is Franklin County Commissioner vacancies. We received a notification from Julie Magoon, County Clerk. Franklin County Commissioners requested that you contact us. They have some vacancies. In our district, District Number 3, there is one vacancy currently. Ray Gaudette from Phillips is on it. Bob Luce from somewhere.
Kingfield. Kingfield.
Glad you could figure that out. Kingfield.
Valley Gas
And there's one
Oil.
vacancy. Who served from here before?
I think it's been years since,
Craig Sargent, I think, was last.
yeah,
Wasn't
since
Craig Sargent?
a selectman served on the budget
30
committee.
years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, Jim Stone might have been the last.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I put that in there because one of the meetings, you made the point that Rangeley's like third largest
Yeah,
It is.
value
We are.
town in the county,
Yeah.
so you have a stake in this big time.
Do any of you have an interest in having your name sent down?
I kind of would have a conflict.
oh, that's right,
I'm a county girl.
But the thing is, the caucus, it says we've arranged a room in the Franklin County Courthouse for you to hold your caucus. We're requesting you
Right.
be present at 5 PM Monday, March 4th, which is a meeting.
Doesn't that mean that all the selectmen in the county get together and choose the committee members? I know that's how they.
I'll tell you, it's the quickest meeting in the world. I went there at 5:05 one time because someone in our region was going and nobody was there.
Nobody, it's a shame.
So our caucusing could be done if you read through it. that's what we're supposed to do. We can do that at the next, no, we won't make it for the next meeting.
No.
Well, there's no assurances that I'm gonna be here next year, but I'd be willing to do it.
It'd be good.
So,
Yeah, if you wanna,
yeah, I mean, if we can consider this a caucus. How you guys feel? Okay, I thought so.
it's unanimous.
We're good over here.
I also money.
I think that's a good idea.
All right,
Yeah. If it wasn't Brooke's senior year, I'd be happy to do it, but
no, I understand.
we've got colleges to visit, so she can decide where she's going.
It's okay. Yeah. Okay. I have grandchildren, you have college kids. Okay, select board communications, anything from any of you?
I am.
Is that a yes?
Me, yes. What is our policy on media with committees and board members and stuff like that?
You mean social media or
Well, for all media,
all
like
media?
if you're doing social media is more, has become bigger than the, before. Usually it was just basically, if someone was calling that it was a reporter or something, they were always directed to go to the chair
Yeah.
or the town manager.
I think it should go first to the town manager, and then if there's other, it should come to the chair after that. To me, that's the,
So does that mean for all the committees, and like I said, I would love to see like a welcome packet to every board or committee that we have that actually gives someone some kind of direction. Because I know like with employees, do we have a media for employees if they're putting something out on social media?
We do.
I know I have one at my bank, but
We have an email policy and, I don't
Computer
know that-
use and email,
Computer
I
use.
think it's kind of an old policy, probably
Yeah.
before the premise of social media.
right.
It could be something that we send to Emily. and have-
Just because social media now is becoming so much, and that sometimes when you are like an employee or something, your opinion really shouldn't be out there without support or something.
Without permission from their boss.
Yeah. Just think.
so do you have a specific request, or is this just a general question? Because
No, I'm
you
just
could-
thinking that I think we need one, I think,
Yeah,
is what I'm saying.
I
all
would
right,
agree with
I
that.
agree.
Yeah.
I think we should.
I don't know if that's something that Anna Lee might already have in her
I'll check with her
paperwork.
tomorrow.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah.
So, a little bit more. You were requesting that Annalee bring us a sample to look at, so we
Yeah.
could,
Just to
perfect.
give an idea.
I think that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah.
You agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's go that route.
Tomorrow.
Awesome, thank you. Anything else?
That's on you.
Couple things for the different departments, and I should have done this at budget, and I forgot. Pretty busy week, the last week, and I think police and fire, with all the events that were going on, and town crew did a stellar job, an absolutely stellar job. I didn't hear one complaint, I heard all good things, so I want to thank them for that. Pass that along. There is no executive session tonight, so need a motion to adjourn at 12 after. Second? All in
Second.
favor? Thank you.
Are you seconding
Appreciate
that,
you
or
all
you
coming.
seconded
I
it?
seconded it.
Oh.